What if the outcome of one of America's most talked about murder cases no longer depends on whether the accused pulled the trigger, but on what was happening inside his mind? For months, the prosecution's case appeared straightforward. A healthcare CEO was gunned down on a Manhattan street. A suspect was identified. An arrest was made. And investigators believed they had the evidence needed to secure a murder conviction. But just when many thought they understood where this case was heading, a dramatic courtroom revelation changed everything. Now, Luigi Mangioni's defense team is preparing to make an argument that could completely alter the course of the trial. An argument that doesn't deny the tragedy. An argument that doesn't dispute the victim's death. But one that could mean the difference between a murder conviction and a significantly lesser charge. It's a legal strategy so controversial that even discussions about it were initially kept behind closed doors. Today, we'll uncover what this defense means, why legal experts say it's notoriously difficult to prove, and whether it could reshape one of the most closely watched criminal trials in recent American history. Welcome back to Beyond True Crime. If this is your first time here, you're joining a community that digs deeper than the headlines to uncover the facts, the investigations, and the courtroom battles behind today's biggest criminal cases. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you're fascinated by real investigations and high-profile trials, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a case. Because later in this video, we'll reveal why prosecutors may view this new defense strategy as a major challenge, what extreme emotional disturbance actually means under New York law, and whether it could ultimately change Luigi Mangioni's fate forever. Let's get into the case.
A 27-year-old Luigi Mangioni, who is accused of fatally shooting United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in Midtown Manhattan in December 2024. Mangioni has pleaded not guilty to both state and federal charges. Yet as preparations for trial continue, his defense team has revealed a strategy that could dramatically alter how jurors view the events surrounding Thompson's death. According to court proceedings made public this month, Mangioni's attorneys intend to argue that he was experiencing what New York law describes as an extreme emotional disturbance at the time of the shooting. The significance of that defense cannot be overstated. This is not a claim that the crime never happened, nor is it an argument that investigators arrested the wrong person. Instead, the defense seeks to convince jurors that Mangioni's mental and emotional condition was so severely affected that it should reduce his criminal responsibility. If successful, the difference could be enormous. Rather than a murder conviction, a jury could instead return a verdict of manslaughter, a result that carries substantially different sentencing consequences. The revelation emerged during proceedings before Judge Gregory Caro, who disclosed that defense attorneys had informed the court of their intention to pursue the psychiatric defense. The disclosure immediately sparked new debate among legal analysts, observers, and those closely following the case. Because while the defense prepares to explain Mangioni's emotional state, prosecutors are expected to present a very different narrative. Their case has long centered on the allegation that the killing was intentional and deliberate. In the months ahead, jurors may find themselves weighing two sharply opposing explanations for the same event. One side will argue that the shooting was a calculated act. The other will argue that extreme emotional disturbance played a critical role in what occurred. And somewhere between those competing narratives lies the question that could ultimately decide the case. As the trial approaches, public attention continues to grow. The victim was a high-profile executive. The allegations generated national headlines. And now, the introduction of a psychiatric defense has added another layer of complexity to an already closely watched prosecution. For Brian Thompson's family, the legal arguments unfolding in court represent only one part of a much larger story. For them, the case centers on a life that was lost and a future that was forever changed. For Mangioni, the upcoming trial could determine whether he spends the remainder of his life behind bars. And for the jury eventually tasked with hearing the evidence, the responsibility will be immense. They will not simply be asked to decide what happened, they will be asked to determine why it happened and whether that distinction matters under the law. Stay with me, because later in this video, we'll break down exactly what extreme emotional disturbance means, why legal experts consider it one of the most challenging defenses to prove, and whether this strategy could ultimately reshape the outcome of one of the most closely watched murder trials in America. This is Beyond True Crime, and this is the latest chapter in the case of Luigi Mangioni.
Now to the explanation in details. What is extreme emotional disturbance in regards to legal cases? In a legal case involving mental health, extreme emotional disturbance, EED, is a defense that falls somewhere between a complete insanity defense and having no mental health defense at all. What EED means legally? A defendant argues that, at the time of the crime, they were experiencing such an intense emotional crisis that their ability to think rationally and control their actions was severely impaired. The key point is that the person is not necessarily claiming they were psychotic, insane, or unable to understand what they were doing. Instead, they are saying that overwhelming emotions substantially affected their judgment. Common emotions involved may include extreme rage, terror, grief, panic, despair, humiliation, emotional shock. How courts evaluate EED? Courts typically look at two questions. 1. Was the defendant actually experiencing an extreme emotional disturbance? This often involves testimony from psychologists or psychiatrists. Evidence may include mental health records, witness accounts, and behavior before and after the incident. 2. Was there a reasonable explanation for that disturbance? Jurors consider the circumstances as the defendant perceived them. The emotional reaction must be understandable, even if the resulting conduct was unlawful. How it differs from insanity. Insanity defense claims the defendant could not understand reality or know right from wrong because of a severe mental illness, can lead to a verdict of not guilty by reason of insanity. Extreme emotional disturbance. The defendant usually understood what they were doing and knew it was wrong. The claim is that overwhelming emotions significantly impaired self-control. It is generally a partial defense, not a complete one. Mental health evidence. Mental health experts may discuss depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, anxiety disorders, trauma history, personality disorders, acute stress reactions. However, having a mental health condition alone does not automatically establish EED. The defense must show a connection between the emotional disturbance and the alleged crime. Example: imagine a person learns of a devastating event involving a loved one and experiences a severe emotional breakdown. During that emotional crisis, they commit a homicide. The defense might argue that the person was acting under extreme emotional disturbance. The prosecution, however, may argue that the defendant had time to cool off, the actions were planned rather than impulsive, the emotional reaction was not severe enough to meet the legal standard. Why EED matters. In jurisdictions that recognize it, a successful EED defense can reduce a charge from murder to manslaughter. The defendant is still held criminally responsible, but the law recognizes that their mental and emotional state may lessen their level of culpability. One recent example where EED has been discussed publicly is the case of Luigi Mangione. If you gained value from this explanation, like, comment, subscribe, and share.